Okay, that should be good, Becky.
Thank you. I'll call us to order pursuant to subsection 403A of MSRA Maine Revised Statutes. Annotated, we will now confirm that each member of the MSAD11 school board can hear and be heard. We will do this by calling the roll. Members present are asked to say yay. We will ask all members to listen and report any audio difficulties when the roll is completed. And now I am going to my list. Okay, so this is for the Finance Committee. Kitty, you have to go. Becky Fless, yay. Linda Caputo, yay. Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
James Lothridge,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
and Earl McCormick is no longer with us. So other board members present, Tony Veet,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock.
Yay.
Let's see. I think that's all the board members. Administrative staff?
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent.
Here's my partial.
Andrea Dish, Business Manager.
Chad Kempton, High School Principal.
John LaPerria, Middle School Principal.
Nate Stubbard, Athletic Director.
Terry McGuire, Director of Technology.
Elisa Morris, Director of Special Services.
Karen Moody, Principal of Laura Richards School.
Katie Gould, Principal at Helen Thompson School.
Vicki Duguay, Principal of Riverview Community School.
Christina O'Neill, Principal of Pittston Randolph Consolidated School.
Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum.
Great. Before we proceed, are there any audio or technical difficulties that we need for Terry to help us with before we go any further? Hearing none and seeing nothing in the chat, we will proceed with the agenda. First on the agenda is to discuss the fiscal year 2020-2021 requested budget. Andrea, I'll ask for you to take us through that.
Could I begin? Maybe
yes, of course.
Overview, then I'll redirect it to Andrea.
Actually, Pat, before you begin, I'd like to be able to tell the public where they can find the documents that we'll be using. So they're on the MSAD11 website. If you go to the school board, you will find a section that has documents. Within that documents folder, you will see a folder labeled 2020-2021 budget. And nested within that budget, within that folder, you'll see tonight's meeting with all of the documents that we will be discussing. So it's yours, Pat.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. So first of all, I thought it would be nice to just kind of walk through and make sure that you all have the documents that were sent to you yesterday evening or last evening. One, we sent you a copy of the class size policy, IIB. We provided 2020-21 projected enrollment. So you can look at enrollment this year as of the end of February. And we rolled it over to next year so that you could see projected classes and staffing levels. We provided you a proposed 2021 budget expenditure article so you could see what that looked like. We have a proposed 2021 requested budget workshop. We have a complete list of all of the reductions that have been removed from the budget since the first time you saw the proposed budget. And then we also have a list of staffing reductions to the budget. So we're going to go through each of those step by step, but just wanted to make sure that the public and all of you were aware of the backup documents that we provided to help facilitate this conversation. Okay.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. So just kind of to recap, the last time that the Finance Committee met was at the beginning of March. Due to the shutdown from COVID-19, The central office, the administration has just done all it can just to address immediate concerns that had to be dealt with. Behind the scenes, we were still working on the budget, even though we were not publicly meeting. There's been a lot of work done. But the last time that we met, I show that we met back on March 5th. And on March 5th, the proposed budget that you received showed that the budget was up 6.86%, which was equivalent to 1,764,000 and some change. Yet the impact to taxpayers would have been 20.53%, or the equivalent of $1.9 million. When that was presented, we knew that we could not put forth that budget, that it was way too high, and it was unacceptable. And that was before COVID-19 came and shut us down. And now we have, of course, concerns regarding the economy. We don't know what the future is going to hold for us. So we've been working really hard to get that down. In the original proposed budget, if you recall, the areas where we had the largest increase had to do with regular education. We were looking at a 6% increase, which was equivalent to about a $675,000 increase. And the other was special education. We were looking at an increase in special education of 22.72%, which was equivalent to $871,000. Again, we knew at the time that we weren't going to be able to sustain that. Today, in the paperwork that you received last night, if you look at the expenditure article sheet, you will see that the proposed budget is down to an increase of 0.69%. So we are now down from a 6.86% increase to below 1%. And that's equivalent to $177,865.92. So we'll kind of walk through all of the places in which we've made some reductions so that you can see how we went from 1.7 million to 170,000. Now, even though we're below 1% of an increase over the current year, that still reflects an increase to taxpayers across the board of 3.26%. That's $306,636. So I know that that's still a bit of a concern that we need to talk about. So included in the packet, as I said, is a list of all of the reductions that have been made in the budget. A couple of the most significant ones, and then I'm going to turn it over to Andrea. And Andrea created this document, so I'll ask her to go through it. First is health insurance. When we first presented this budget, we had no idea what our projected health insurance increase was going to be. So we budgeted 10%, which was more conservative than what we've budgeted in the past. Typically, we will begin around 12%, but this year we started with 10% as a projected increase. And we were notified in the beginning of April that our increase came in at 0%. We have no increase with our health insurance, which is amazing. We're really fortunate. So we were able to go in, make the reduction, and the rates that we have this year will be the rates that we have for next year. So Andrea will talk about that, but the savings are considerable. The other thing that Andrea is going to talk about with you is reserve accounts. We've talked about reserve accounts in the past. Created a reserve account last year for some operations and maintenance. Well, the legislature has now broadened the ability of school districts to be able to use reserve accounts, and they have expanded the school board's authority to be able to spend that money after taxpayers have approved it. So as we went through our budget development process and we looked at special education and the fact that we have to budget for some unanticipated expenses throughout the year, we've talked to you about the fact that we built last year's budget, and then for the first month of school, we had 12 new students that required significant support from special ed. We had some out-of-district placements that we weren't planning on, et cetera. So we're looking at incorporating into this budget process a reserve account for special ed so that we have a pocket of money available should we encounter some unanticipated cost, but we don't have to carry that in the budget. So I'll have Andrea speak to that as well. So Andrea, can you walk us through the
I want this in it.
Actually, Pat, I'm going to go back to the requested budget worksheet, and I just want to remind people watching, somebody's got their sound on, and I can hear it. So part of the reason for the additional increase to locals is that the valuation of the 4 towns increased. So as a result, the towns are having more. Can I stop for a second? If there's somebody pouring soda, would you please mute?
I'm trying to. It's me. It's me. How do I mute it? I can't. How do I mute?
At the bottom, can you scroll down a little bit on the bottom of your page and it will pop up and you'll see like a telephone head and you'll be able to hit that and mute. If it doesn't pop up, hit someone's photo and then you'll see this white bar at the bottom will pop up. Oh, and actually it's a microphone. The microphone will pop up. It's on the left-hand side and
There,
you just.
I think I got it. Is that better?
No, you're still. There you go. You got it.
Okay, sorry. So as I was saying, part of the reason for the additional increase to the locals is that the valuation of all 4 towns increased. And as we know, part of the assessments are based on valuations. So I wanted to just mention that when Pat mentioned the worksheet. So she's asked me to go through the reductions. The sheet that you have in front of you starts with the budget that was presented. I have the March 10th Finance Committee meeting where the budget was at $27,482,381. So my sheet is broken down into the 10 categories the expenditure categories that the state requires us, or 11 rather, expenditure
Can I stop you
articles.
for a second?
Sure.
Would you show what document, what page are you using? Just show it to us.
This one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So my placeholder that we're starting with is what we discussed at that meeting. And then now I'm breaking out all the cuts by expenditure articles. So you're going to hear me keep repeating the same things like health insurance. So the first expenditure article that the state requires us to detail is regular instruction. As part of the cuts in regular instruction, there's a math teacher that is proposed being cut. The savings from the math teacher is $46,283. Additional professional development tuition, what we pay for our instructional staff to take classes. $20,000 was cut. We had put additional monies in there because additional teachers were seeking getting accredited through the National Teacher Certification. So we were spending more than we had traditionally spent in years past. There were some elementary and middle school teaching positions that we had spoken about in a previous Finance Committee meeting. The total of those cuts are $265,895, and I believe Pat's going to discuss them further into our meeting. Health insurance reduction going from 10 to 0%. The effect on that expenditure article is $129,346, resulting in $524 in cuts from expenditure Article 1. Article 2, special education, special ed tech reduction. We have an ed tech that is being paid from RSU 12 as a result of a tuition student. I have moved the funding source from the district to RSU 12. And as a result, I was able to take a cut of $36,000. There's some middle school special ed math kits that were cut during the budget process for $5,400. Special ed Spire kits, they were purchased from the current year in the amount of $7,876. The health insurance reduction from special education was $130,836. Tuition to special private purpose schools, Pat touched upon it. Alicia, Pat, Sarah, and I met, and we discussed the expanded authority of the reserve accounts. So it used to be that in order to create a reserve account that you would need to have a public meeting, and you would put money in by vote at the public meeting. And then if you needed to take money out, that you would also have to convene a public meeting. They have allowed us to remove those funds or use those funds with a board vote. So it made sense having the additional flexibility to move some of our carry forward into the reserve account in the event we needed it. So we ended up cutting $359,335,000 from the budget, and we are going to request that $250,000 be moved into a reserve account at the public meeting. A BCBA position. During the conversation with Alicia, Pat, Sarah, and I, we discussed sharing a BCBA with a neighboring school district. As a result, $50,000 was cut from that position. And I think we had talked about in a previous meeting, the Medicaid seed match, the amount that we are required to pay for those special purpose private students who are Medicaid eligible. I felt that we could cut $159,000. So the total that was cut from special ed was $748,547. Article 3 is CTE instruction. We currently do not pay any tuition to Coney, to the CTE center in this current year, so there are no cuts. Other instruction, Article 4, there were no cuts. Article 5, student and staff report, the health insurance reduction in the amount of $28,186. System administration, Article 6, that was the health insurance deduction in the amount of $23,591. Article 7, school administration. Power School software was cut. That is being paid by the Maine Department of Education. That cut was $10,988. The health insurance reduction in Article 7 was $28,030. Article 8, transportation. The health insurance reduction in transportation was $14,391. The other cut in Article 8 for transportation was transportation to special private purpose schools. So when our buses basically go out of our district to deliver a student to another SPPS school, that transportation needs to be tracked separately. And we felt that we could cut $70,055 and be able to use some of that reserve funds if need be. Facilities maintenance, Article 9. We ended up cutting $15,000 for boardroom furniture that we had budgeted. The health insurance reduction was $5,449. The Gardner Area High School roofing project, there was originally $130,000 in the budget. We cut it, but not really. We have moved the project into this year, and we're going to do it before the end of the fiscal year. So the roof is still going to be done. The Helen Thompson siding project, again, we have moved that project into the current budget year. As a result of no longer doing school in the buildings, we felt that there were savings, so we thought that we could do some of these projects in the current year. And the last project that we moved into the current year was miscellaneous paving throughout the district that totaled $25,500. So the total reductions added up to $1,590,272. So there's that.
Thank you, Andrea. So I would maybe I would open it up and see if there are board members who have questions or comments about any of these reductions. And I will talk about the staffing reductions as well in a moment.
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned that you were taking several things out of a reserve account. I'm not quite clarified on that. Did we have a reserve account set aside did we reduce our our carryover by a certain amount and that we're giving it credit here, or how did that work?
So what we're going to, the only reserve account that we currently have, Jim, is for capital improvements. And I believe right now there's only 50,000. So what we're proposing is at our public meeting for the budget that we create a new reserve account, and that the public at that time is going to have to vote to create the reserve account. And then what we're going to do is ask them to take 250,000 of our carry forward. So remember, carry forward is monies from previous budgets that haven't been used. And if you remember, the only time the only thing that money can be used for is carry forward to further reduce a budget in another fiscal year or for reserve funds. So we feel that we are confident, I feel, or Pat, we all feel rather, that rather than budgeting all of the placements in special ed and not have them materialize, that we would move some of this carry forward into an account and access it should we need it, rather than increase the budget. I noted that in this year's budget, we had several placements that did not go out of district. So it actually, our budget this year was larger as a result. So rather than doing that from year to year, leaving a cushion in this reserve account. So when the time comes that we expend all of the monies in the budget for special purpose private schools, that we will come to the board and ask. There are monies in the budget for placements. I believe we left in 3. There are 2 placements in local entitlement that can be used for unnamed students. The 4 that we left in the budget currently are for students who are currently attending. The other placements that we discussed were students who are not yet attending, and we may think that we have other options for them, but in the event that they would need to go to a special private school, that we would be able to access those funds to send them. In addition to the local entitlement and the budgeted slots, we also have $50,000 in contingency. So I am comfortable, or we are all comfortable, that creating this reserve account, it will meet our needs without increasing our budget.
The carry forward account, how much do we have in that account? What's the total of it? And we're reducing it by approximately 359,000. Is that what I'm understanding?
So we would be moving 250,000 left over from what's left over from the budget at the end of the year.
Okay. And how much will that leave in that account?
I do not have that in front of me, but I can get that for you for our next meeting.
I would appreciate it. Could you send me an email with that amount, please?
I will send the entire board an email with the information.
Don't let me get too confused. Thank you.
And Jane, just for clarification, there are 2 pockets. There is carryover money from previous year's budgets, and then there is anticipated carryover at the end of this school year. Andrea does not yet know how much money we're going to have at the end of this school year. She is setting some money aside based on current expenditures. And so it is from this current year that she plans to pull $250,000 from to put it in the reserve account should the school board and should the voters approve that. Okay.
Can I just add one more thing? We are in a great position, Jim. Unlike a lot of school districts, they only have 1 year of carry forward. So what they're doing is they don't know how much they'll be able to put against next year's budget because it's not the end of the year. We, however, have 2 years worth of carry forward. So I know based on what I had left over last year that I have enough money to apply to this year's budget, as opposed to constantly watching the budget at the end of the year to see if we're going to be able to make that carry forward amount, or whether or not we're going to start the budget in the hole already. So we're in a great position. The other thing that Pat and I talked about is right now the state of Maine is hemorrhaging funds from the COVID, and we anticipate that we are not going to get all of the funds the state promised us through no fault of their own. It's the world that we're living in. So I'm not sure whether or not any of the other board members have been here in a year where we have had a budget curtailment. So basically what the state does is it cuts off the amount that of money that they're going to send you, and then you have to make do. So I've already anticipated a curtailment of up to 500,000. I don't think I've ever seen one more than that. But in the event that things go drastically south, we need to be able to have that revenue. The other option would be to slash $500,000 worth of things in the middle of the school year. And honestly, the only things that you have that are $500,000 are people, and that would be drastic. So we've been talking about that. So I'm at a place where I'm comfortable that we have enough carry forward for next year, for not only next year, but moving forward the following year, that we have enough in the event of a curtailment, and that we also would have enough to go into that special purpose special revenue account.
And,
Yeah.
and again, for clarification, part of the reason why you feel that we have this is because our buildings have not been operating. Because we have not been operating the buildings, we've been able to generate some savings that otherwise we would not have been able to generate. So I
Right.
just want to be clear with that.
One of the concerns that I have, it speaks to this issue. I've been worried about the state. Obviously, you're worried about the state too. But I'm also worried about the revenue stream for the different towns. I'm thinking of Pittston, of course, not that there's any big problem there, but I'm concerned about all the towns. If their revenue stream is curtailed because of people unable to pay their property taxes, we may see that reflected in their ability of all the towns to pay their commitments to the district. And that's a major concern of mine.
One of the things that I've noticed through all this is I believe there are CARES Act that allows towns to apply for funding. So in the event that they are unable to get tax revenue, we call it a TRAN or a revenue anticipation note, basically borrowing in anticipation of receiving that tax revenue, because eventually it will come in.
Towns will call it a tax anticipation.
Yep. Yep.
And that may be, I don't doubt that will be the case for more than one town, but it still is a concern that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyways, thank you very much. I appreciate what
welcome.
you're saying.
You're welcome.
Could we stay on special ed, since that's our topic, for another moment or two? I would like for Alicia to be able to share with you what is still in the budget for special education. So Andrea has mentioned how Alicia, Andrea, Sarah, myself, we sat down, we looked at the out of district placement and how much money we have removed from the budget or that we anticipate putting in this reserve account. However, in order to do that, that means that we have to expand one of our existing programs. And so I'd like for her to speak to that, and also would like for her to speak to some needs at the middle school. So in this budget is still a couple unfilled ed tech positions that she wishes to use to be able to hire an additional special ed teacher at the middle school based upon needs there, given their caseload. So Alicia, would you speak to those two things?
Yep. So in anticipation of caseload sizes next year at the middle school, and the way we left it prior to building closure, we will need an additional special ed teacher to provide services to students at the middle school to stay within the regulations of 35 points of contact. In order to do that, Pat had mentioned that we have 2 unfilled ed tech positions currently in the budget. And I'm hoping to use those 2 positions to help pay for an additional teacher at the middle school. In addition to that, we are looking to expand our STARS program. Our STARS program is our self-contained day treatment program that is at Riverview Community School. Currently, it services students in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades. We are looking to expand it to service students in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade as well. We've been seeing a need in a lot of social, emotional needs with younger kiddos coming in. So we felt that it was appropriate to expand the program to meet their needs. In doing so, we were able to eliminate 2 out-of-district placements that I had currently proposed at the start of the budget process. So if we are able to expand the program, we can meet more students' needs within our district.
Questions for Alicia? Yeah, well, Alicia is still working with the elementary administrators to determine, and staff, to really determine the location of that expanded program. So that's still a work in progress. Okay. Any other questions regarding the list that Andrea reviewed of cuts?
I don't have a question of cuts per se, but I was wondering what's still, if maybe Andrea could provide us at some point, doesn't have to be right now, but what is still in the budget of things that we've discussed previously? That would,
Such as what? Can you remind me of the things that we talked about previously?
well, I know we were considering, we have the, and I forget the term, and of course, obviously all working remotely, I don't have anything with me, right? But we had the professional development for math and for language arts that we were considering before. Are those in there at all, or, yeah, so things like that. But there was also, I can't remember the other special education position that was in there at one point in time as well.
Sure, sure. We have in there the BCBA, that is the behavioral specialist, and Andrea mentioned that we have decreased that to half-time. We're optimistic that we're going to have an opportunity to hire or contract with a person who works for another school district. So we'll be able to get the services of an individual. It wouldn't be full-time as we had hoped, but at least it will be our first exposure to a BCBA, and it will absolutely increase the services that we currently have available for both staff and students. We have in the budget the psychological evaluator. That is still in there. We built that, but in the budget for it's been in the budget. We lost a person. We budgeted for it last year, and we were unable to fill the position. It is still in the budget, and we are hoping to fill that position. In the meantime, Alicia has had to contract services in order to fulfill those requirements. We do not have in the budget all the things that we wanted and what we've talked about. And then I will turn it over in a minute to Angela and let her speak to some of the PD and some of the monies that she has available through federal funds and in the budget to cover some of that work. But we've talked about adding coaches, the need to have some math coaches, some literacy coaches for our staff across the board. They're not in this budget beyond the math coach that we currently have employed. We've talked about the need for an additional social worker. We have one social worker at the elementary school who spreads her time throughout the week in each of the buildings. This does not include another social worker. We administratively, we've talked about some funds that we have around what's called an academic tutorial program. And that is, each building in the elementary schools, we have an individual who will come in who's like a substitute and will support teachers, and it will provide teachers an opportunity to work individually with students, students who may need some additional support. We're having just a general conversation that maybe that's a resource that we could use to pay some staff to help serve in the capacity of a coach, of a mentor, but that is not, that the details to that have not been worked out yet. Okay. All right. I'm trying to read the notes on the side, and Jim had a question, but I think Jim's all set, right? Okay. So Angela, could I turn it over to you? Becky? Becky, I can't hear you. You have no voice. Okay. Yeah, type something and we'll respond. In the meantime, Angela, would you kind of share what you're doing or what we have for professional development?
So we have anticipated funds that for Title 1, 2, and 5, 4 and 5. And Title I funds are typically reserved for our interventionists at the K-5 level, literacy and math. So those are being maintained. Title II funds do help with our local budget by using a class size reduction allocation. And so that where we have a bubble in numbers of students in a class and we need a teacher to keep the class sizes manageable, we're able to take some of our federal Title II monies and place that in a staffing position. So we'll continue to do that, and it will help with our overall local budget for this coming year. Title II is also set aside for professional development. So I will be utilizing those funds to support some of our professional development, some of our math learning, and our literacy learning, early literacy learning, and a project at the high school that we have going around research. And then we usually transfer Title IV over to Title V, and that will help us also reduce our local budget by paying for another math interventionist, a position we've already had and will continue to have in our K-5 community. And sometimes that can also support some of our assessment or technology needs. So at this point in time, in terms of curriculum, we do have a plan to implement a new math program this year. And with a new program comes professional development needs. And so those are budgeted for a little bit through local funds and some through federal funds. And right now we see that I anticipate and hope those will continue to sustain themselves, and the teachers will have what they need to effectively work through the challenges of new program implementation. I also, for those of you on the curriculum committee, we will talk about the math program decision and implications on Tuesday, May 12th from 3 to 4, and that agenda will come out tomorrow. And that, of course, means anyone else on the board who wants to join us or in the public, I guess, who wants to join us are welcome to participate in that conversation. Tony, does that answer your question?
That was John.
Oh, John, does that answer your question?
It does. Both you and Pat did a great job. And I think I did mention professional development, but I was more referring to the coaching. But I really appreciate you touching on the professional development as well. I do think, I just think that a lot of this is going to be important going into the next school year after such, an extravagant amount of time away from students, away from classroom instruction for everybody. So I appreciate the answer.
So, oops, go ahead.
John, There is another pool of money that we're going to be receiving, and that is actually on the agenda for Thursday night to begin discussing. And that is the CARES money, the CARES Act. All school districts are receiving some money, and the purpose of those funds is to help students transition back into school. So Angela has been working with administrators to begin devising a plan to determine how those funds may be used to address that very concern. I don't know, Angela, if you're prepared to maybe mention how you guys are currently thinking those monies might be used.
So as Pat has said in as many words, it's a draft. The, the guidelines are still in development. The actual application for the CARES funding through the Maine Department of Education has not been published. However, there are currently webinars and online call sessions for me to gain a better understanding of how those funds are anticipated to be used. They are not allowed to be used to basically supplant a local budget. So we can't just plop those dollars in where we would normally have our budgetary allocations set up locally. So here's our current draft thinking, and then maybe by Thursday it may shift a little bit. We will use some funds for extended school year, COVID impacted remediation. So basically what we're anticipating is that not this summer, but next summer, there will be a number of students, a significant increase of students who may need continued instructional support over the summer in order to catch them up. And there's a process by which we identify those students. We do set aside local or some type of funding through special education every year for those ESY or extended school year services. And we are going to use some CARES funding to double that to in order to be prepared for the increase in students. Additionally, we plan on trying to develop another approach to intervention services during the academic year that may happen after school with supported transportation potentially on a regular basis across our K-12 community. So we would differentiate by high school, middle school, and elementary school exactly how that will play out. And that will run through our RTI process identification and our special education process, and it would service all students who qualify, and the funds would be used to pay for our staff and our services and our transportation. So that's a significant cost. We needed to put in some funds for professional development for trauma and social and emotional learning in light of the fact that our students have not been in school for 6 months and we're in the middle of a pandemic. We anticipate both our staff and students will need some additional support and training to transition us back into our learning communities. So funds have been set aside for that. Some supplies and replenishing of supplies that we aren't able to put into our regular budget as a result of sending everything home for 6 months, and some technology to support the laptops that the Maine Department of Education has provided our district through the COVID-19 funding or CARES funding. And then lastly, we anticipate setting aside funds for a literacy coach to build capacity of staff to meet students' needs or increased needs. The challenge with the coach is that these are one-time, one-year funds. So we can't assume that we will be able to sustain that. That will take some board work and decision-making over a long period of time to see if that's something we can manage in the future. That's the draft. Yeah, if you have questions, I'm sure Becky can facilitate a process for me to answer them.
Absolutely. Yeah, feel free to, if you have questions during the meeting,
we can do it, but otherwise, send me an email and I'll make sure it gets to Angela. It's fine. I think I'm heard now. Is that accurate?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
I took out my earbuds and that seems to have repaired whatever it was. I've never been told that I was too quiet, so that was new.
Andrea was going to say, you had a comment at one point. Are you
Yeah.
all set?
Well, I'm wondering about Power School is going to be paid for the $10,000 by the DOE this year. Will that be ongoing, or is that just for right now during the COVID experience?
It's ongoing.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry,
great.
Pat.
We were informed of that prior to the pandemic.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really wonderful. Okay, thank you. That was all I was curious about, and all the other questions. I did want to know what sharing a BCBA would look like, but I think that's been addressed.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's keep moving.
Then the other thing that we haven't really talked about would be staffing levels.
Yeah.
So with this budget, there is a reduction of 5 teaching positions.
Mhm.
So one, I shared with you again the class size policy so that you can take a look at that. The 5 teaching positions are spread out across the district. If you have in front of you the spreadsheet that says current staff and current students and staff ratio and projected ratios at projected staff levels, we, the administrators every year, we use this document to help us really assess the appropriate staffing levels that we need to maintain our class size policy appropriately. So we in the elementary schools are looking at reducing 3 elementary positions, 2 at Helen Thompson and 1 at the Pittston School. If you start on page 1 of looking at this document, you will look at LER. LER, we're looking at the same staffing levels next year that we currently have this year. There's really no change. And all of those class sizes fall within the range set forth in the board policy. If you look at Riverview, we do have 1 class moving into grade 5 where we have a teacher that technically brings us below the class size policy. For board members who've been on the board for a few years, you may recall that this has been a class that has just had, there are certain dynamics in the class that have benefited from having smaller class sizes. And this is an area that Vicki has really advocated for the benefit of the students. And she really feels like 1 more year of having those lower class sizes are absolutely essential. So as we look to the next budget that we develop, unless something changes, most likely we'll be looking at a decrease in a staffing position at Riverview. So you can anticipate that in the future. Looking at Helen Thompson, based on the kindergarten enrollment that we have seen over the last couple of years, and based on what Katie is projecting for this coming year, she anticipates that we can move from 3 kindergarten positions to 2 kindergarten positions. This year, we had class sizes, it ended up being about 12 students per class, which, while that's wonderful, that is more than what we can really afford. So we are proposing changing that to 2 teachers, and the class sizes would range around 18, which is still within class size policy and that we feel is still manageable. Looking at grade 3, currently grade 3 has 3 classroom teachers at Helen Thompson. We're proposing changing that to 2. As you look at your class size policy, the span in 3 and through 5, is really higher than it is at the lower grades. And so your span is 18 to 24, while your target is 22. By eliminating a teacher there, it brings you to 24. So it is out, it's within your range, but it is certainly at the maximum. And while we wish it were lower, it still does fall within class size policy. And those teachers have just been amazing. They've had class sizes of roughly 22, 23, 24, and 25 for the last few years. So it is a situation that they is not new to them. Again, it's a challenge, but it is not new to them. So that would remove the 2 teaching positions from Helen Thompson. If you switch to the next page, you come to Pittston Randolph. Currently, Pittston Randolph, they have 3 teachers in grade 3. And we're looking at class sizes somewhere around 14, 15. So we are also recommending that we reduce the number of teachers in moving up to grade 4 from 3 teachers to 2 teachers. And the class sizes there would be right in line with Helen Thompson of 23 to 24. We're trying to do this through attrition. We have a teacher retiring at Pittston. We have a teacher retiring at Helen Thompson. So 2 of these 3 positions can be managed through attrition. Unfortunately, it does mean that we will have 1 probationary teacher that we will not be able to invite back because we won't have a position for that person. At the middle school, we have a person, if you recall, who left middle of the year. That position, we just hired a long-term sub. The proposal there is to not fill that position. And by doing that, we will have 7 teachers for each grade level. Last year, when we built the budget, we reduced 2 teachers at the middle school with the anticipation that this year we would reduce a 3rd teacher. And the class sizes and enrollment currently allow us to do so. Then we moved on to the high school, and this is all also included in a sheet that I provided to you called staffing reductions included in the budget, so that you could see some of the justification behind all of this. And so we currently have 7 teachers at the high school, and we're looking at those 7 teachers create the possibility of having 35 sections of classes. We really only need 33 sections. And we have a little flexibility with a science teacher who is certified to teach both math and science. So that person is going to be able to teach 3 Algebra 1 classes, as well as teaching her caseload in science. Now, it does mean that we're going to eliminate 2 science electives. One is AP Calculus, and the other is Anatomy and Physiology. Those 2 impact roughly 20 students is the impact. And Chad has been working with his guidance department to find online opportunities for those students. So even though they won't be able to access those electives at the high school, they will be able to hopefully be able to access them through online courses. So, so with this budget that you see tonight, all 5 of those positions have been removed. So questions about those positions? Becky, you're muted.
Matthew had a question in the chat about if we weren't trying to reduce the budget, would the probationary teacher be invited to stay? And I would leave that to you.
Well, that is kind of a personnel matter, and so I can't talk about evaluative types of things as to whether a particular probationary teacher would be asked to stay or not. If the budget weren't as tight, would we be proposing that we shift our class sizes from 16, 17 up to 23? I don't know, Matt. I'm not sure if we would be in a position where we would be making that request. It would really depend on all of the priorities that were set forth in front of us. I don't know if that's a good answer, Matt, but that's what I have.
Yeah, Pat, I get it. I just, my concern is that, of course, the class size. If we could, if the answer in your head would be that the probationary teacher would probably be kept on, which obviously you can't really, I suppose, put that out. But I mean, if the class size would stay, status quo, and the probationary teacher could keep a job, then that's something I think we should probably look at. That's all.
And I guess my response again is it depends on what what our priorities are. I'd kind of go back to John's question. There were other positions that we have wanted to add to the budget. Another social worker in the elementary schools, more coaches. If our budget were in a different situation, administratively, we would be talking about these things, class sizes versus the need for these other positions. I don't know what we would be recommending, but I'm confident that we would be weighing the benefits of each. Okay.
And we always talk as a board when we have class sizes of 12 anywhere. That is conversation, because again, that's expensive. It's wonderful, and sometimes our student dynamics require small class sizes, but those are decisions that we rely on our administrators to make, and we trust them to do that.
And we've talked before as well about the fact that our communities really like having neighborhood schools. Neighborhood schools are more expensive than one consolidated school. So you're not able to minimize or maximize your class sizes based upon all of your staff in one building. And so you do end up having situations where you might have one building with smaller class sizes and another building with larger class sizes. And we just can't control that. Jim had a question about Pittston.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. I thought we were having a reduction in Pittston of one teacher, as I understood it, and that was being handled by attrition. That was, as I read it on the statement, from your staffing reductions, including in the proposed budget. Then at the same time, you mentioned a probationary teacher not possibly being renewed. Where does that, I don't want to know who, but where does that probationary teacher land in this matrix right here?
So we have a position eliminated at Pittston through attrition, just as you said. We have a position being eliminated at the Helen Thompson through attrition. We have another position at Helen Thompson being eliminated. So there will have to be a probationary teacher from somewhere in the district throughout the elementary schools that will have to be removed so that we can gain that additional reduction at Helen Thompson.
Okay.
Okay, the person doesn't have to be located in one specific school. We can move people around. So.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I was kind of lost and thought I couldn't figure it out. So thank you for your response.
You're welcome. We also have Nancy who is with us. Hi, Nancy. I hadn't seen you up on the screen. Calculus is really important to offer students, especially those who are going into engineering, and that she hopes we find online opportunity likewise for AP for anyone going into nursing and such. Yeah, we completely agree. Chad is here somewhere. He may have had to step away for a moment, but I agree with you. Chad agrees with you, and his staff is working to find those online courses that would be beneficial to the students. I think based on sign up for next year, we had 3 students sign up for AP Calculus. So it's too small to hold that class with only 3 students, but their needs are unique. And I know that Chad is working really hard to make sure that we're still able to support them any way we can so that they can still access that program, that class.
Is that something that we could do with Thomas College, like they've done English with Thomas College this year? And I think other
Maybe,
have done
yeah,
with-
maybe, or KVCC, or plus there are just online classes that students can take individually. So,
Right, and that might be just as easy for them to do. Yeah.
right, right. Other questions? Okay, well, that's our proposed budget. If there are no questions from the board, I would maybe ask administrators. I've been doing the majority of the talking. You've had a lot of input in this budget, the development of this budget. Are there things that you want to talk about, that you want to share, that's either in the budget or not in the budget? If no one speaks, I'm going to call on someone.
Let's call on Katie Gould.
Now, I was actually going to call Terry McGuire.
Ooh, that's call on Terry. Katie, you're up.
And call on Terry McGuire because last week we received from the state Chromebooks, some $100 Chromebooks that we now have available for our youngest students. And so maybe, Terry, 1, would you talk about that? And then 2, part of this budget process that we haven't really discussed here is upgrading our phone system. We're hoping to be able to upgrade it with the intent of decreasing the number of lines that we currently have, which is pretty expensive. So there's an initial upfront cost, but there is a potential of a considerable savings moving forward.
Thank you for asking. We had the DOE came out it was like March 25th with a survey for all of our buildings, and they were asking what we would need to do online learning at home. And so when we answered the survey, we hoped and waited and hoped and waited, and they actually came through with some Chromebooks. The Chromebooks aren't as nice as the ones that we usually issue to students, but they're new and in better shape. Some of our Chromebooks, especially at the elementary schools, the screens were popping out. And so we weren't really comfortable with sending them home because we knew there'd be a lot of repair problems. And so the Chromebooks that we got are they're no touch screen. They're just regular touch screens. We got a few for the high school. We didn't get any for the middle school, but we got quite a few for the elementary schools. And so those are programmed and ready to go out. So we're really excited to be able to offer kids at the elementary schools the opportunity, if they choose, to use those Chromebooks at home. And we're really hoping that when they go out next week, that people do choose to use them to communicate with teachers and kind of like a get your feet wet type of situation for online learning. In addition, we asked for some kind of hotspots because we have some kids in our buildings that have no internet access or limited access at home. Well, the tablets showed up today, and so I'm really excited to get those into the hands of the learners at home that have either limited or no internet access. So that's really an awesome gift that we got from the Department of Education. The only cost was that we had to buy the licenses to be used at home, but that was very insignificant compared to the value of the Chromebooks. We know that we're going to have more Chromebooks come home damaged than normal because we have younger learners. And so we also know that we may lose some of our Chromebooks in the fall, but when weighing those opportunities for kids at home versus the damage and the loss, it was definitely worth it. So we're really looking forward to that coming up.
And the grade level?
Yep.
Grade level who will be receiving those Chromebooks?
Our first wave that went through sent our regular Chromebooks home with our 6th graders to 12th grade. And then our elementary students, the 4th and 5th grade, took the Chromebooks that were in a little bit better shape. And then we used all the rest of them for K1, 2, 3 for that to give them the opportunity. But the tablets with the internet access will be given throughout the district to any kid that doesn't have good internet access at home. So
That is so great. Do you have a Chromebook that you can hold up and show us?
no, they're all in the buildings. That's what we did all day today. They are going to be ready to roll.
That is so exciting. And I
That's
love-
awesome.
We had so many volunteers help us.
so great. This is,
It was really heartening.
Terry,
Mhm.
I have a quick question. Are
Okay.
you going to target kids that do not have resources at home first and then follow up with those that maybe just want a Chromebook, or are we going to keep this targeted to those that really need it? And that's our responsibility, I feel, to make sure they have something to keep up with.
Equal opportunity to all. We can provide whoever needs it or wants it.
Okay.
So that's really exciting. When we filled out the surveys, I made sure that the numbers were high enough that we all would have an opportunity.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Really good.
Terry, do you know who's providing the service on those ones that have the built-in capability? Do you know?
Yes, I do. Matter of fact, I was looking at that right before the meeting.
Sweet.
US Cellular.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Yeah, and when we filled out the survey, you had to say what provider was in your area and
Okay.
who had the best. So US Cellular would be the provider. The hotspot provides, if you choose to have the tablet be the hotspot, it's actually 5 connections per household, I heard, so that you could, a brother and a sister could use one hotspot on one device and both connect at the same time. Now, I'm interested to see when we do video how that works, but anyway, hey,
that's excellent.
I have a quick question. This is Matt. So it's a hotspot, right? Is there any charge associated with data usage for each one of those as a hotspot?
So that's a great question. The ones from the DOE came with a 6-month free of charge connection. They must have used their grant funds to get it.
That's excellent.
So after that, we'll have to pay for that?
No, after that, those tablets will be coming back.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully we'll be back in school by then. Right.
Right.
And if not,
Excellent.
we'll do plan B. So the phone system is something that we have been saving for many years. When I came here in 2000, we put the superintendent's, the central office was the very first phone system we put in. And then we started putting one system in per building after that. So it took us a long time. And so our phone systems are pretty antiquated. One of the problems that we had once the COVID came was our systems, we couldn't call from anywhere. People weren't in the buildings. The newer systems you can use in your home or whatever. And so we're hoping to move ahead with that. But because it's such a big bill and such a big project, you have to move slowly so it's done well, and it will have to go out to bid. And so we're hoping that that can be done soon. We have 53 lines right now in the district. We'll have to keep some of the lines, but hopefully we can, get rid of some of the lines.
Yeah, you're hoping to cut approximately 20 lines, correct? Yeah, so I don't know how much a line costs each month, $40, $50? So $50. So we are looking at considerable savings down the road.
Terry, will this be a voice over internet system or is it a landline system?
Voice over internet.
Thank you.
20 lines out of 53. That's amazing.
Yeah, right.
That's huge. That's
Yeah,
really
that way we can maybe centralize the calls. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Any other administrator? Do you have anything that you want to add or share or talk about in terms of the budget?
Pat, John had asked me, or John had asked a little while ago what was remaining of the list that I had created of items in the budget.
Yes.
I have that list. So this was a list that was originally shared on 310. So I'm going to go again by article of what's remaining. So in Article 1, there is still $81,750 of instructional one-on-one devices. There is still an unfilled teacher position, special ed teacher position at Pittston School. We talked about the BA, the psychological examiner. There is still Tiger Cub robotics that we put in this budget, the increase to girls ice hockey, $20,000 of athletic supplies in anticipation of the Hoke Field, a curriculum shift of about 38,000 in professional development conferences, 5 additional days for each of the elementary administrative assistants, and that and the photocopiers, that is still remaining in the budget.
Thank you, Andrea.
You're welcome.
So, Becky, I would ask that the administration kind of turn this conversation over to you and the board. I mean, this is the budget as it stands. We've given you the general overview of everything that's in it, what's removed from it. And so now the administration needs to hear from the finance committee and the board as to where you want us to go with the budget that we've reviewed this evening.
So board members, do you have questions or comments?
Becky, can I just say something? I'm not on the finance committee.
Yeah.
But I think the budget looks as good as it can look for the times we're in. I do really hope that once we get past all this COVID situation, that we can really look seriously at another social worker and a literacy coach. I really think those are two very important things that need to be in the budget this coming year, but I also understand why they can't be. I just think we're going to have kiddos coming back to school with lots of needs, lots of academic deficits, and having those two positions would be really great. But I also respect the work you've done, and I understand why we can't do that. So
I appreciate. I'm gonna get to Jim in that in just a second, but I want to just agree with you, Veronica, that the work that the administrators have done is outstanding, and you just must be so exhausted from all the work that you're having to do. And I want to say thank you for that. I'm really concerned about our kiddos coming back that have been in families that don't necessarily look like ours, and just the removal of structure from the life of every child, and what that will mean at the start of school, and just the difficulty. I appreciate so much that you came in. You didn't do the wish list. You did the this is what we can afford list. And I really, really appreciate that for our community. But I am concerned. I do have ongoing concern about what it's going to be like heading into next year, going forward, and just the needs that we had before haven't gone away. Just our capacity to pay for them has changed perhaps dramatically going forward. And I support wholeheartedly all the work that you're doing, because you're the ones that are in the trench doing the work, and I will do everything I can to support the work you're doing. Jim, and then Matt.
Yeah, I think this budget looks real good. I'm surprised you're able to get that much done in such a difficult time, and I applaud you for it. It's great. My one concern that I have about starting school next year, and maybe Pat can speak to this, do we have any guidance as to whether or not they're going to be asking us to social distance within the school structure itself? Have you heard anything one way or the other? I know some states are going to be requiring that starting next year. Can you speak to that?
Yes, we have not received guidance yet. I had a conversation yesterday with Commissioner Macon regarding graduation and the guidelines for graduation, because Chad is working really hard on that with his staff. And all I've heard is that there are folks working to define what those guidelines will be, so that we have guidance, but they're not done yet. One of the things that we'll need to talk about in a little bit has to do with the budget approval process, right? It's a two-step process to go through that validation of your budget. And I was told in the middle of April that guidance was just around the corner, and we still haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But with that said, Thursday night at the board meeting, we'll begin just touching upon the fact that we have begun thinking about the start of next school year. Not extensively, we haven't had a chance to do that yet, but we're going to have to put plans together with based on different scenarios. If school opens, if school doesn't open, if school opens and closes, the actual building. So conversations are happening. I just don't have any direction yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Matthew?
Hey, yeah, I'm here. I just one quick question, and sort of I'm a numbers guy and a bottom line kind of guy. So compared to last year's budget, Andrea, and I don't know if you can even answer this question, and maybe this is something we should just discuss on Thursday. But as far as a percentage increase over last year's budget, is it a wash? Is it as it looks right now? Is it like a 1.2, 1.5, 2% increase? What are we out of? Just sort of off the cuff, what do you think it looks like right now?
So Pat mentioned it at the beginning of our meeting. So we're up.
I'm sorry, I came in
You're
late.
fine. You're fine. So it's 0.69%. It's less than 1% increase over our current budget.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. That answers that. You guys have done a remarkable job. I just want to give you kudos. I'll echo what Becky and Veronica said. You guys have done a super job and couldn't ask for more of an effort. So thank you all so
Matthew, to follow up on your question, though, since you missed it from the beginning, it does translate to a 3.26% to the locals. And I mentioned at that time that part of the reason is the valuation. Because of the increase in valuation of our 4 communities, the state is asking them to raise additional money. So that's part of that. So
I get it. Yeah.
I just want you to know.
Yeah, those are things that are beyond our control, right? I mean,
correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alyssa, you had a comment?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So I'll just echo what the other finance members have said. I think you've done some very creative processing here. I'm interested to hear more about the reserve account and the CARES Act money that we've got incoming. But I was not expecting to be under 1% this evening when we talked, so I just give you kudos. Thank you, Andrea, and the administrators, and Pat for that. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. Other comments from board members, finance committee members, or otherwise? Okay.
So am I understanding that the finance committee is satisfied with the budget that we've proposed tonight? And this is the budget that you're willing to support and send to the full board for consideration?
I think the finance committee is surprised and pleased. And I say pleased carefully, but I think, yes, I think that's exactly true. Yes, amazed at the work you've done. Yes.
Thank you. So if that is true, then I would encourage, Becky, that the finance committee, you do a roll call.
Sure.
See if there is a motion and a second, do a roll call so that we can talk about next steps to get the board approved, but also for us to be able to communicate with the municipalities for their planning purposes. We want to make sure that we get some information out to them as well.
So I'm looking, for a motion and a second from two finance committee members, please, to take this proposed budget to the board for approval. James Lockridge moves.
I'll second.
Alyssa seconds. So we'll call the roll now for all those in favor. Becky Fless is a yes. Linda Caputo,
Yes.
Melissa Tracy,
Yes.
Jim Lockridge,
Yes.
and John Umland.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I need to adjust Thursday night's agenda. I need to add a couple things. So I will also insert approval of the proposed budget. So you can see that adjustment should come out tomorrow. All right. So Andrea, you have a question?
Reminder that another part of the local assessment is the adult ed budget, which we have yet not discussed. That assessment also goes to the locals, and it's separate than from our local, but from the district budget. So we would need to at some point address that.
Thank you. Yes.
You're welcome.
I have been hyper focused on this budget. I have not been hyper focused on adult ed. Now that you have approved it, I will turn my attention to adult ed and get that budget squared away as quickly as possible. The other thing that I do want to just talk about very briefly here has to do with the budget approval process. As I indicated, we've been waiting for guidance from the state since the middle of April. Hopefully it will be coming out soon. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page, in order to get the budget approved, it is a two-step process currently. And the first step requires a budget meeting. That's the budget meeting that we generally hold at the high school in the gymnasium. With the requirement for social distancing and not being allowed to have greater than or more than 50 people gathered at any one time, we're going to have some serious consideration on how to conduct such a budget meeting, unless the state comes and provides us guidance otherwise to give us greater flexibility to get through that approval process. I've spoken with one of my colleagues in the state, and what they're going to be doing is they're going to have in their high school like 3 different locations for people to be during the budget process. So say the gymnasium, we would have no more than 50 people there. Maybe we would ask the clerks from each town to be in a separate area. If there's an overflow of more than 50 people, maybe we put them in the mini gym, or maybe we put them in the mini theater. And so it is going to take some planning on our part, including you, on how we want to do the layout. Should we still need to conduct the budget meeting in a similar format that we've had in the past? After the budget is approved through that process, as a reminder, it then goes to the public and it goes through a budget validation process. The governor has moved the state referendum from June to July 14th. So the intention, at least from my perspective, is that we need to follow with the town, with the state, and have our referendum on July 14th. Now, our school year begins July 1st, but from what I've heard and what I understand is that we will still be able to operate and function within the budget that was approved this year until a new budget is approved, hopefully through that referendum process on July 14th. Okay. So as soon as I receive more guidance, I will certainly share that with you. But sometime in June, we will have to hold this budget meeting unless the governor tells us something different. Linda, did you have a question?
No.
No?
I have a question real quick.
James?
The adult education, we need to have that approved at the budget meeting. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yes.
How soon will we be able to get all of this information to the town so they can at least get an estimate for their own budgeting so that they can be prepared to send out tax bills, which are without something from us, they're at least Pittston, I know, as I understand, is not sending out any tax bills yet because they're not sure what their mill rate's going to be.
Right, and they haven't even had their town meeting yet, nor has
Right.
West Gardner. I don't know about Randolph yet. So they don't even know for their municipal budget how much money they need to raise.
Yes.
All I can say, James, is now that this is settled, I need to turn my attention to adult ed and work with Andrea and Josh to get the adult ed budget finalized and presented to the board as soon as I can. I will try to do that within the next couple weeks
Pat,
to get that finalized.
that budget's done. It's just a matter of bringing it forward to the finance committee. Both that and the school nutrition budgets are finished. So
Okay, I'm going to need some time to review them though before I'm prepared to send them forward. You guys have finished the backup, but I still need to review them with the director.
Can we have a special board, special finance committee meeting to get this process working through? So yeah, I think that would be welcome by the towns.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly have a finance meeting next week, next Tuesday. I think I have to look at the calendar, but have one next Tuesday, and then have a special board meeting to finalize all of the budgets. Yeah, I'll work with Andrea. It can be a quick meeting. It doesn't have to be too lengthy, and get that squared away. We can provide to the towns the estimated impact of this budget. They already know what the impact was last year for adult ed. So if they want to, they can use last year's assessment for adult ed, look at this year's, and it will at least give them an idea of where they need to be.
Okay. The sooner we can get it to whatever, as soon as we can get them some concrete facts, the better it's going to be, I believe.
Sure.
Thank you.
Jim,
Yeah.
the process is usually once the budget has been passed, the board votes to accept the budget, the vote, and then the assessments are prepared and delivered and notarized to the towns. I would highly doubt that they would prepare their tax bills without having those final assessments. You know, I understand that it will give them an idea, but I don't think it will proceed until that process has run. So
I think you're right.
Okay. So that's everything I believe that I had on my agenda for us to talk about today. Andrea, is there anything else? Okay. So that's all we have. Becky, if you want to adjourn the meeting.
I do.
Good.
I'd just like to again say thank you so much to our administrative team for working so hard to make this feel as though it's seamless, even though I'm sure it's not. And I just want to say thank you very much. And that I miss you guys. It's so nice to see your faces. Great. Thank you.
And we will see everyone Thursday night at 5:30, same place, same time, right?
That's right. So be well, everyone, and we'll see you Thursday night.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.